Alright, welcome back to YNR Update. It's Paul here. I want to thank you all for coming back. We'll start out with what happened on today's episode. We actually see Victor and Gabe, or Adam, sparring in this one. Like I said on the last episode, we had Gabe find Victor at Jack's desk, and the two sort of go at it. Now, Victor thinks that he's sort of an impetulant punk and treats him that way, but Gabe can't help but harbor these feelings that he has for his father of deep hatred along with the need for approval. So it comes out in Gabe, and Victor's, it doesn't show, but he's getting a few clues as to the fact that that this guy may not just be some punk. He seems to be able to push certain buttons that Adam could push with Victor. So we're gonna watch that interaction. The two of them are great on screen together. I really want to see how this plays out and at what point Victor starts figuring out that he's actually sparring with his own son. Next we have Summer, and she and Kyle are sort of getting their feelings out, let's put it that way. Kyle professes that he came back for her, but she turns around and tells him that she only sees him as a brother. Now, after that, they're interrupted because Noah and Courtney come and they share their great news. Everyone is excited for them, hugs all around, and we then follow Kyle, and we see him talking to Summer again, and this time it's at Crimson Lights, and he shares more about his feelings. In fact, he lays a deep kiss on Summer, and it really throws Summer for a loop, but we don't really see her fighting the kiss, and eventually she tells him that she needs him too. So much for seeing him as a brother, because that kiss I saw didn't look like the way a brother and sister would kiss. So we know that things are heating up with the two of them, and it looks like they're on their way to fighting their way back to each other. After that, we see Kevin, and he is always digging. So he found some surveillance footage that Austin had of Jack, and it could be telling, only they only have so much of the footage. Now, in order to get more, he wants to access some of the police cameras in order to see what Austin was actually following Jack around for, if Jack did anything. So he starts hacking into the police server, only he gets a service denial, and that triggers an alert for the police chief. So Paul comes running in, and he questions Kevin about what he's doing in the server. Kevin is stuck for an answer, and Paul just says, you just got to give me a good reason why you were doing it, and Kevin says, I can't. So Paul's got to suspend Kevin. So when Kevin goes back to the group and they find out about his suspension, they push Courtney to use her access to help them, get access to the surveillance footage, but they're met with huge resistance. And now it's Noah, and he's going to step up now because, like I said before, he wants everyone to sort of drop this, and it's almost like let the grown-ups handle it, because I think he's trusting that Dylan, along with Stitch, can get to the bottom of this. So he almost puts his foot down and says he doesn't want her in harm's way. So it creates a little bit of tension. In fact, Noah says that he wants to marry Courtney as soon as possible. It seems like Mariah's got a different suspect every day. In fact, on today's episode, she's now turned her efforts to Kyle, who she now thinks is the killer, and she's not sparing any effort in going after him. Next, we see Abby, and Abby and Stitch are talking about the fact that Stitch has got to go and pick up his sister's ashes. I guess they don't have FedEx over in Abu Dhabi, but he wants to go get her ashes. It means a lot to him, and Abby wants to go along with him. We see more of this bond between Stitch and Abby developing, but Stitch shuts her down and says it's something he's got to do on his own. Later, Vicky comes over, and you see the distance between the two of them. She wants to come along with him to Abu Dhabi, but Stitch is having none of it. In fact, he tells her he really doesn't want her to come along, and Vicky is, she's down about this, but in the end she does something that anyone who watches the show will find peculiar. She says, well, why doesn't Abby just go along with you? You can take Abby along with you. So you see what's setting up here. I mean, I don't know, Stitch is already in one betrayal, but I guess the writers are going for a double betrayal. That way, when Vicky heads back to Billy, we're going to know in her heart that she shouldn't have been with Stitch, because they're really pouring it on, because the affair that's coming between Stitch and Abby, you can see from a mile away. Anyone could. Stevie Wonder could see it. As well, we see Billy and Vicky talking about their how they comforted each other the previous night, and then Chelsea walks in. Of course she's jealous about the whole thing, and she is not impressed that the two of these guys are getting close. And then Chelsea and Billy go back to one of their fights over Gabe, because Billy pulls that out and says, you know, you're getting close to Gabe. And so they go back and forth. In fact, Billy goes one further and he admits to Chelsea that he and Vicky almost kissed. I don't know what this guy's thinking, because anytime you say that to your fiance, that you and your ex-wife almost kissed, things aren't going to go well. And but they managed to sort of, you know, out of, I guess, mutual jealousy, have a coming together, and we see them embracing at the end of that scene. We also see Jack and Ashley, and they're trying to figure out what Victor's plans are, because they know he's up to something. They know that, well, they've also been alerted that Victor is now in the building, and he's in plain sight, so they know that he's scheming, and he wants them to come over. And you know, against their better judgment, I guess they do show up and confront Victor and accuse him of corporate espionage. But Victor is, I mean, he's a roadrunner to their Wile E. Coyote. He's very slippery. And in fact, he turns the tables on them and tells them that he has been hacked as well. So they should join forces in order to figure out who's going after them. Jack and Ashley aren't buying it, and they don't want to join forces with Victor. He's the guy that's headhunting them. So we're going to have to see how that one plays out. We also see Nikki, and she makes a trip over to Paul. Now, what Nikki wants from Paul is, she's now got this envelope that she grabbed when she followed Victor to the church, and it's got the fingerprints. She wants Paul to check it out. Well, Paul has learned his lesson. He sees what his, you know, his interactions with Nikki have done to his family and his wife. It's a pretty painful moment, because Paul also tells Nikki that Chris can't have any more kids. So he turns her down flat. In fact, he tells her to go take it up with the proper authorities, or through the proper channels. Now, Nikki turns around and heads to confront Victor. She actually puts all her cards on the table. She shows him the fingerprints and asks him what he's up to and if this has to do with Jack. Now, Victor shuts her down and says this has nothing to do with Jack or his need to take over Jabot. In fact, he says it has to do with the corporate espionage that's happened to him and the hack on the Newman system. So she sort of acknowledges that maybe she overstepped her boundaries. Victor throws it in her face and says, you don't trust me, this isn't about Jack, this has to do with an attack on Newman. And so Nikki takes off. After that, Victor gets on the phone and he lets his contact have it. He says, next time I tell you to show up at the church, show up at the church. In fact, he goes one further and says, we have to come up with a new meeting place. After that, we see Jack call Gabe, Billy, Chelsea, Ashley, basically for a war council for how to deal with Victor. They all know an imminent attack is coming, and they know Victor's reputation. He's not going to leave anything standing, so they want to get together. But first, he reminds them that they have to stop the infighting. There's no two ways about it. They have to stop sniping at each other, the two couples, in order for them to go ahead and, you know, figure out what Victor's up to and defend it off. And that's pretty much all we have for this episode. So please, I love the response. I love the fact that you guys are throwing questions at me, and I love answering them on YouTube. Please keep the questions coming. And like I said, subscribe, and share this with your friends. I am not going to bail on this. I love doing this, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.